Good morning, friends. Nice to see you. Just reflecting on the week together. It's been interesting this week, just in meeting with people here at the Moulin. I met with the team here last night, sort of 10 or 12 people who are here on staff. And then meeting with other people individually during the week. And just this sort of theme of love and let go that I've been exploring with you all week. Just that same theme sort of weaving its way into other meetings and reflections and situations. And we've looked at it this week in various ways. In some ways, we can make this distinction between our inner lives and the outer world. How are we dealing with the inner life? How are we dealing with the outer life? And of course we might speak like that sometimes. And yet it's also an artificial distinction. Right? Inner and outer is a very crude kind of distinction. Because what is really outer that without being inner? Look around you, you say, oh, well, look, here's the world, all this is outer. But you really come into the perception more fully. Where is it? Is seeing, right? You're seeing, you say, oh, I'm seeing stuff that's out there. But is seeing an outer experience or is seeing an inner experience? We say, well, the object that's being seen, the seen is outer. And the seer is inner. And then maybe the seeing is what makes the bridge between inner and outer. We could put it like that. There's a lot of silly ideas. Like the Buddha says in the Bahia Sutta, just in the seeing, just the seeing. In the hearing, just the hearing. Well, what does that mean? Well, it's an encouragement to us to kind of, if we really come into perception, we see there is no seer and there is no seen, basically. There's just seeing and the rest is inferred, because then there's thinking. But there's no thinker and there's no object that's being thought about, there's just thinking. It's like the whole of life is this kind of effulgent movement, right? There's just happening. And out of this happening, we infer categorization, me and the world, inner and outer. And all that inferring is just more happening. Right? We don't have a clear view of the happening. So, of course, we speak about outer and we speak about inner. How am I dealing with my inner life? How am I dealing with my outer life? How am I dealing with my working life? How am I dealing with my social life? Oh, so many lives, just life. It's all just life. And that makes it all a bit more manageable. So, what's my practice? So it's practice of loving and letting go, making room for what appears in life and holding it all loosely. Making room for what appears, love, and holding it all loosely, letting go. And, but as I say, of course, we speak about that. And when we look out at the world, even that tendency to exteriorize the world, and even then there's a lot of different worlds. What's the world? What comes to mind when I say the world? It's very interesting to see what's our associations, projections, assumptions. What is the world? What is the world? The world is where we live, right? The world is the domain of our sensory experience. Oh, I don't know if you can hear. I don't know why the dog is barking, but I'm sorry for the disturbance, if indeed it is a disturbance. The world is the domain of our sensory experience. But increasingly often we have a sense of the world in the abstract. I wonder, when I say the world, do you think of countries? Do you think of the planet? Do you think of the global geopolitical world? The mediatized world? The world that comes to you through newspapers and, if anyone reads those anymore, or through websites and social media? The way those things give us a very curated, a very particular, often a very sensationalized, and most importantly, a very abstract sense of the world. And if that becomes too much our sense of the world, it's very hard to love that, because it's too far away, it's too abstract. And then it becomes hard to love the world in that abstract sense, because what we're constantly being fed, our vision of that world, is a vision where everything's wrong, basically. I mean, the way that works, right? That just the sort of clickbait, the oh my God, this is bad, this is wrong, these people are terrible, that thing happening over there is awful. That's what drives, our kind of, sense of alarm and fascination. That's what drives obsession. You can agree with that or not, but it's just true. That's what newspapers, who endlessly, track their clicks, that's what they find. And so our vision of the world gets worse and worse and worse and worse. Terrible people, terrible things, terrible events, terrible problems. And that's the world. What a terrible world. And of course, it's not to be in denial that those things are happening, but is that the world? Because the problem with that world is there's very, very little you can do about it. When your sense of the world is all happening elsewhere, it engenders a sense of hopelessness and of disconnection and of alienation, of despair, of loneliness, and of powerlessness. Oh dear. Because the world, as I say, is the domain of our sensory experience. I lived through the whole of the 90s without electricity. The first half up in the Himalayas for most of the time. Second half of the 90s here in France, but in the Pyrenees, where we lived in the forest without any electricity or running water. And so we didn't have TV, we didn't have a radio, didn't have any sense, really. For most of those 10 years, I had very, very little sense of what was happening in the sort of culture, in that outer sense of the world. And when sometimes people would be a little shocked by that, and even indignant, as if telling me, you've got a responsibility to read the newspapers and listen to the radio and watch the TV. And they would say to me, angrily even, but if you're living like that, how do you know what's going on in the world? And I would say, I open my window. That's what I know what's going on in the world. I open my window. That's the world too. And that's a world that one can love. It's a world that you can care for. It's a world you can tend to. It's a world in which you can show up for difficulty. It's a world in which you can, help somebody in distress. It's a world where you can make a difference. It's hard to love a world that you can't make any difference to. A world that's actually beyond you, a world that's over there and abstracted. So, it's easy, of course. It's very, very understandable to feel some sense of despair at the state of the world, at the dysfunctional politics, the unequal economics, the broken sort of social dynamics, the harsh rhetoric, the rise of intolerance and kind of in sort of more extreme politics. Easy to be despairing. The ecological calamity that we're living through, the dysregulation of climate, and the real threat to everything we recognize as a kind of human history and human infrastructure. Oh, very, very understandable to feel hugely concerned. And yet, what's the difference between feeling really concerned and awake around all of that and falling into despair and hopelessness? I think partly it's to do with that sense that the world seems far away and out of our grip. You know, the angst people feel around the ecological situation, right, is largely because it sounds so terrible and there's nothing I can do. You know, what a terrible, painful situation to be confronted by the fact that here's something that's really painful that urgently needs real intervention and there's nothing I can do. Or at least what can I do? I can recycle. You know, feels like such a minuscule drop in the ocean. Maybe some of you have heard me quote the line from that poem by W.S. Merwin, or maybe you've read the poem yourself by Merwin. It begins, "On the last day of the world, I would want to plant a tree." Now there's a beautiful expression of love and let go. On the last day of the world, I would want to plant a tree, and it kind of speaks to us amidst the dysfunction of the world. I mean, you know, dysfunction is normal. Sabbe sankara dukkha. You know, nothing is nothing. We don't live in utopia. Nothing is perfect. You know, things are constantly going wrong. Or another way of saying that is things are just going, just going, and the going of them involves things going wrong. And amidst that, the most sane thing, the most caring thing, the most profound thing we can do is take care of what's in front of us, take care of the world, take care of what is here in our sensory domain. There's many opportunities for that. And sometimes that might be just the way you make a cup of tea. You know, it matters. You have a sense of how huge the world is and how vast the dysfunction of the world is. It's like, well, nothing I do matters. And that can feel disconsolate. On the one hand, it's true, actually. It's like, oh, nothing I do matters. Don't make yourself so important as if the world is waiting for you to, you know, solve all its problems, etc. It can feel like that sometimes as well. But when you have to raise your voice, you have to speak out, you have to, you know, shout on social media, you have to post all the links to all the things that you think are worthy causes. No, you don't. Nobody cares what you think. Really, nobody cares what I think. And I think that's actually an important kind of humility practice. It's like, nothing I do matters. Relax. And yet, on the other hand, everything I do matters. How I make tea matters. It's like how I care for the world, it matters. And then our sense of the world becomes sacralized, if that's a word. We step more fully into the world. We learn how to love the world. And it turns out that loving the world is also loving ourselves. I mean, that's not just a cliche. That to show up and care for what's happening is deeply soothing for our own hearts. It's also deeply sense-making because the world comes alive as we care for it in a way that it can't do when our sense of the world is one that's lost in abstraction. So, friends, what good fortune that we have this practice of coming to the world. Or actually, more, we might say this practice of letting the world really appear here in the citta, in our field of consciousness. This practice of seeing that the world is our own heart. That line of the Buddhas. Buddha says, the whole world arises and passes right here in this body. So what does that mean to really, not just the idea of it, to let one's body be the world, to let the world be one's body? Well, the best way to do that, best way I know, is to settle into being here in such a way that we just see that truth. We don't need any convoluted intellectual attempts to make that reconcile rationally. We just settle into being here, so that in the sensing there's just the sensing, in the hearing just the hearing. The world and heart, same substance, same presence. Please take your seat for meditation then. So please, sit like you mean it. You're right here in the heart of the world, in the center of the world. So, show up. Really feel your way into your seat. So that on the one hand, you're giving yourself to being here, brightly, clearly, intentionally. And yet, on the other hand, you're showing up very gently, not trying, not doing, not forcing anything. It's as if, settle into your seat as if your attention, what it really most wants is to gather and settle, to enliven your cells, and fill out your sensations, to suffuse your breathing, to light up the world. And the sensing, just the sensing, it's coming in to the world of sensation. Whether it's the feel of air on the skin or legs on the cushion, the length of your spine, or the flow of your breath. Let it all happen freely, naturally, within an atmosphere of allowing, an atmosphere of tenderness, of love. Gently, gently, settling your attention. Softening the little tensions that install themselves. Gently, gently letting go again and again of stray, abstract thoughts, concerns, projections, descriptions. hearing, just the hearing. Coming inside the experience of hearing, where the heard and the hearer dissolve, and where this sound, sounds in the room, sounds in the street, sounds inside or outside, sound of my voice, where the sounds of the moment dissolve the sense of inner and outer. In the hearing, this intimacy with what we call self and what we call world. Sounds unfolding naturally. Effortlessly expressing the nature of everything, the changing nature, the fluid nature, the naturally unfolding nature. Hearing with love. Hearing as an expression of love. Hearing is a way we love the world. In the thinking, just the thinking. No need to identify with thought. No need to believe everything one thinks. No need to be convinced by the idea of a thinker. Just neurons firing, expression of human brilliance. Thoughts like fireworks, briefly fizzing, lighting up the great open sky of awareness. No drama, no blame, no angst about thought, no judgment of the content of your thoughts. Just thinking. If you have a genuinely useful thought, a genuinely original thought, a genuinely brilliant thought, just trust that you'll recognize it as such. And for all the others that are not so original, not so creative, more or less recycled, same old ideas, same old images, same old reactions, I'll just let them fizz and pop. Just let thinking be part of the texture of awareness, the stuff of the world. Passing through awareness in the same way that sounds do, in the same way sensations do, in the same way all experience does. So that here's the world, arising and passing, right here, in this body, in this chitta, in this great intimacy between awareness and experience. May our whole lives be dedicated to loving and letting go. May our whole lives be an expression of love and letting go. May we dissolve the gap between self and the world. May we all live freely. Whatever brief time is available to us. All right, friends. Well, very much enjoyed being with you this week. Enjoyed your questions and your comments and just leaning into this theme of practice together. Beautiful. So there's a little time for any questions. It might stand out from the theme of the week, or it might just be kind of, alive in the heart, as it were. Please feel free. And while you're typing questions or raising your hand or whatever, just the reminder of Dana, and as it's Friday, last day of the week, I tend to bang the Dana drum a little louder on Fridays, and mostly to say what I've said the other days. All this is freely offered, and so the request is then to, in return, to offer your support, appreciation in the form of Dana, and the fact that that is the engine of how we keep the lights on at Sangha Live, how we keep the website up, how we keep teachers coming, how we keep being able to offer teachings and practices. And as I've said in other days, I don't know what your circumstances are. If your circumstances are difficult financially, I really want, on the one hand, it's like I really want you to be able to feel that sense of gratitude and all, and to feel totally okay about not making a Dana offering. If you can't afford to offer anything, if you might feel great appreciation, but your situation is difficult, if you don't feel able to offer anything, please feel totally okay about that. And in fact, what I'd like to suggest that you do, if you don't make a Dana offering, is turn your attention to where do you make Dana offerings, not necessarily financial ones, but to really connect with somewhere where you offer. To really recognize the goodness of the way you offer support to others, the way you offer your time and your care to others, and to just really recognize the goodness of that. And then on the other hand, if you feel, you appreciate what's happening here and you'd like to continue showing up to Sangha Live, right? So you'd like it still to be here, and you like that other people can be here, and so you'd like to support that idea. In that case, then please do make a Dana offering. Please do, whether even if it's a very modest offering. I don't know what your situation is. It may be that a few euros represents a significant offering because money is tight. Or it may be that actually, you could give 20 euros for this week, or 30 euros for this week, or more than that for this week, and you feel good about that. It might be you can give more than that and feel good about that. I don't know. What I want you to do is feel good about your offering. And of course, in order to feel good about it, it has to be, if you give an amount that's just doesn't represent anything for you, you don't feel so good about that. If you give an amount that's actually too much, more than you can afford, you won't feel good about that either. You don't feel anxious. So what would be a way of offering support, appreciation, gratitude, that sense of sharing, freely offering, that would support you knowing that you're making a difference, and caring for the world. He's supporting me, supporting Sangha Life, supporting everybody else who practices here. And that would also support you, that sense of you feeling the goodness of dana. Buddha speaks about dana as a foundation for happiness. You know, we love, it's good to feel supported. And we love to be able to offer support. And that's what dana is. That's what dana is. It's that kind of that beautiful sense of mutuality. Feeling supported, offering support. Feeling supported, offering support. You know, and a way to describe that is loving and letting go. Loving and letting go. Yeah. So thank you, friends. Thank you for the dana that you may have already offered this week, or that you offer today. It's very much appreciated. It's very much crucial to the functioning of Sangha Life, and it's very much a beautiful thing. Thank you. And George can just paste in the link. There it is. All right. Yeah. And thank you, George, for all you've been doing this week, being there in the background for people. All right. Where did I saw there was some questions? Where have they gone? Kathy says, is there a difference between hearing and listening? I'm thinking of hearing as passive and listening as putting, yeah. Listening, one's intentionally going to what's that? And hearing, just a sort of sense of happening. So within a meditative context, you could frame it either way, right? When just like, you know, you might be sensing what's happening bodily, and you might be intentionally like bringing your attention into sensation, right? We have that same distinction for seeing and watching. Seeing, just what you see. Watching, you're actually more intentionally tracking. And because seeing and hearing are our most dominant senses, we have that active and passive word for them. Whereas smelling, tasting, tactile sensing, I don't think we make that distinction so much. It's interesting, in French, we do have that. Like for tasting, there's two different words, goûter and déguster. They're a little different. They have a little bit that same flavor of just tasting and then actually tasting with intention. But because in France, we love the gastronomy. So in terms of meditation, there can be that sense of just settling into presence, non-preferential preference. And within that non-preferencing, just that sense of hearing. In the hearing, just the hearing. And we're allowing sounds to come and go, but we're not trying to hear anything particular. But we also might have that sense of listening meditation, actually really coming to the aural sense and abiding there in a similar way to the way we might really choose to come into breath. So there's a sense of a whole sphere of experience, and we can attend to that intentionally, coming to one or other sense door, coming to one or other facet of experience, or we can attend more generally, right? Not trying to do anything particular, just resting, but presence itself is actually the reference point, the ground, and then whatever happens is just coming and going. And mostly partly that depends on our aptitude, and partly it depends on the steadiness of our practice. If you not feel steady, if your mind's all over the place, it's usually more helpful to attend intentionally to a particular domain of experience and keep coming to it, coming to listening, for example, coming to sensing the breath. And when there's more steadiness or more clarity, in the sense of don't need a particular object, just abiding in presence or abiding as presence. And then there's just in the hearing, just the hearing. And one's not trying to hear, one's just basically allowing and contemplating and being alive to whatever's coming and going. And that's really one's noticing more just the coming and going nature of experience, rather than trying to stay focused on a particular experience. I hope that's clear. You can let me know if it isn't. What else? Danielle says, I deal with a lot of self-doubt in my career. I find myself creating that reality in the sense that I perform poorly because I don't believe I can do it. Yeah. And I feel there's a lot of wrong view here, but it really keeps me stuck. I find anger today as I'm tired of this feeling. Painful, Danielle. Yeah, painful. So a few things. I don't know anything about your situation, right? I don't know what your work is and what domain it's in. I think one of the things to check is, how aligned the work you're doing is with with your values, with what you most care about. Sometimes we can feel like I should be able to do this better, or I should be at something. It's like, do you actually really care about what you're doing? Do you love what you're doing? Does it feel meaningful to you, what you're doing? Well, it's worth checking, And then, like you say, the self-doubt is very corrosive, right, to the sense of capacity. There's different types of confidence. There's the confidence to do something, and that really means that we have the skill. Like we talk about, sometimes you hear in this sort of self-help world about confidence as if you just turn it on. But if you give me a violin now, I can have zero confidence that I'll be able to play the violin. I mean, or you see that sometimes people have too much confidence, and they, without realizing, hey, you don't have any skill with the violin. It's just noisy. So there's that form of confidence, the confidence to be able to do something, and that depends on skill. You have to know. So if you have those skills, that's helpful, recognizing, oh, I know how to do this. I've developed skill in this. I'm actually quite good at this, and it might need just a conscious reminding of that and grounding in that, right? And that's where you can use the other form of confidence, which doesn't depend on skill. It's just the confidence to be, right? Just knowing, oh yeah, I know how to be, And that's a confidence that's kind of quiet and deep, and it comes mostly actually through relaxation. We learn the confidence to be through relaxing. Like in meditation, it's a profound practice for confidence. Because you get into all this neurotic thought and you just keep dropping it and sensing and dropping and relaxing and opening. And then increasingly we realize that nothing can disturb this. Nothing can disturb this. Just pleasure and pain and gain and loss and praise and blame, all that stuff, all the stuff of the world that keeps coming and going. I prefer a lot. I prefer the praise and I prefer the pleasure, right, to the blame and the pain. But most fundamentally, that's not what's primary. And then we kind of settle into a very, very sort of deep, relaxed, unshakable kind of confidence. So within that, there's also the history, right? Whatever the history is, your own historical patterning that pulls you into a sense of doubt and collapse and self-criticism, etc., etc. Yeah. So that's worthy of some exploration. Why don't you believe you can do it? You say, I perform poorly because I don't believe I can do it. Why don't you believe you can do it? Is there a true perception? Is there actually something you're missing? You're missing some information, or you're missing some skill? Because if so, that's important to know. Oh, actually, what I really need to do is, I need to study this more or learn this skill more, etc. Or is it, I don't believe I can do it because of a historical pattern of not believing. And, that's really the work with Mara. So I have a whole month-long course on Sangha Live about working with Mara, which is the Buddhist personification of self-doubt. And it sounds funny for me to say it, but it's a really good course. A lot of people here have done that course. Hundreds and maybe thousands now have done that course with me. Yeah, thousands, in fact. And it's that kind of work with self-criticism, self-doubt is so crucial. Because without it, even if you have other real insights and kind of growth moments, we could say, those growth moments get corrupted you know, by the self-doubt that then comes and says, oh no, but you didn't really have that experience, or you don't really, and then we kind of shrink, it keeps shrinking us back into an old form of deficiency. So if some of that sounds familiar, you might want to check out that course. Yeah. All right. Sonia says, if there is no inner and outer, is state change the only constant, or is that an illusion too? Only awareness? Is there no polarity? Is that the same as no inner and outer? So it's tricky, Sonia, right? On the one hand, the one extreme is what I was speaking about earlier. We make too much distinction between outer and inner. But we can go the other way and be too extreme, and there's no inner, there's no outer. Well, okay. But the world appears to us as if there's inner and outer. And sometimes, so we can both dissolve the fixation of that, the belief in that, right? But also we have to show up sometimes as if, right? We have to be respectful just for boundaries and for just normal functioning. So let's not go to the extreme saying there is no inner, there is no outer. Right? Certainly that can be an experience. But the truth is we can have the experience of inner and outer, and we can equally have the experience of no inner and no outer. You know, kind of the complete blending, the complete intimacy with everything, the complete dissolution of outer into inner and of inner into outer. But just because we can have that as the experience of that is very beautiful, profound, transformative, important. But I wouldn't then go to make that an ontological position. There is no inner, there is no outer. Right? And the perception of inner and outer is important, but limited. The perception of no inner, no outer is also important, but also limited if we cleave to it in that way. So beware of ontology. Ontology means the conception of how it means how things exist. Right? We don't cling, like the Buddha says, to existence or to non-existence, to the idea that there is inner and outer, or that there isn't inner and outer. Perception can be more dualistic, or perception can be more non-dual, right? Or unitary. Right? And it's what's important really is that we move freely through all these different modes of perception and not get stuck in any one of them. Yeah. So I'm very wary of metaphysical pronouncements. State change is the only constant, for example. So there may be modes of experience where that seems really true and a perfect encapsulation. Wow, state change is the only constant. If that arises, beautiful. Let yourself live in the wisdom of that, right? In the freeness and the fluidity that comes alive out of that. But just watch out for then kind of reducing back to the metaphysical pronouncement. Yeah. So on the one hand, we can say, yes, there's only awareness. But on the other hand, we can say, no, there's a whole world of experience. You know, it's almost anything we can say. When we fixate on it as a position, we can find that the opposite is also true. Like even earlier today, I said, nothing you do matters. And everything you do matters. Right? So that's the trickiness of teachings. If we fixate on various different things can be beautiful and important and powerful and true in the moment. But the more we fixate on them as this is what's beautiful and powerful and true, the more we corrupt their truthfulness and can very often find that the opposite is also true. You know, that's what the symbol of yin and yang is, right? That sense that these two seeming opposites completely belong to and are part of and are completely dependent upon each other. So freeness isn't moving from one position to its opposite position. Right? It's actually the kind of the spaciousness and the fluidity to be able to accommodate and make use of and be unconstrained by all positions. All right. I think I don't see any more questions. There may be one or two more, but I see a lot of appreciation. So that's nice. That's beautiful. Yeah. Yeah. So thank you for your practice and your presence this week. Your good spirit and kindness with each other, all that you express in the chat. Thank you for your dana and the offerings of support that you make. Yeah. And if I've missed any questions there, then I'm sorry. Hope you'll have another opportunity to ask them. I won't be back here for a while because it's going to be August soon, and we take a break from Sangha Live in August. But I think I have a course up that Sangha Live are promoting through August. Or there's the Mara course. Oh, there's so much stuff. There's all the archives to look at. There's your own practice. There's summertime. You could come to the retreat. You'd come to the Mulan and hang out here in the Dharma of things and sit a retreat. Anyway, here's wishing you well now and through the summer and in each moment. Please go gently through the days. Yeah. Thank you, friends. Thank you.